Hey everybody, it's Patrick from Patrick Friends Music Company, and today we're going to be actively listening to the band Hiatus Kaiyote. We're going to be listening to the first 5 tracks on the album Choose Your Weapon. So for copyright purposes, you're not actually going to hear the actual music come through the video. You're going to have to pull it up on your own, whether it's on a streaming service or whether you buy or download the album. I'm going to be listening along on Spotify. I'll include a link in the description, and I'm going to be sharing my screen so you can see what track I'm on and where I am in the track. Then we're going to pause after each song and talk about it. So, like I said, we're going to be actively listening. And what this means is really just listening on a deeper level. So, you're going to really want to pay attention to what's going on in the song, performance wise, compositionally, and just anything you can pick up. Now, if this is your first time actively listening, what I suggest doing is just focusing in on one thing. So, whether it's a specific instrument, whether it's just a specific musical device, so like the rhythm of the bass drum or the melody of the vocals. And you're going to be actively listening to the level that you are as a musician. So if you're a beginner, focus on really simple things. And if you're more advanced, you might want to even try transcribing while you go. So let's get right to it. I'm going to pull up the track on Spotify and we'll get to listening. So the first track is called Choose Your Weapon. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we're actually going to talk about this one just a little bit. So I actually want to go into the next track because this is, as you can tell, kind of an introduction track, and then we're actually going to talk about both together. So let's actually pop up our next song and let's get to it. So the next song is going to be Shaolin Monk Motherfunk. Ready? 3, 2, 1. All right. So a lot going on. So to break this down, I'm not going to break it down totally. To do that, we would need a lot of time. So there's a lot going on. I want to touch on the intro track, which is, the title of the album, Choose Your Weapon. It was an introduction track, so that's why I didn't stop to talk about it. A lot of what everyone call it, sound effects, samples that they layer on top of each other, which is really cool. And they sort of, what I thought was cool about it is they sort of bring in the vibe of the album. Like they have all that stuff in the beginning, which I'm sure is important. So if you listen to the whole album straight through, I'm sure it's important for that thematically. But then they sort of bring in that sort of, I don't know, sort of transition to the new song, into the first song or second track, where they have that sort of bass drum, almost doing not same rhythm every time, but that short sort of rhythm with the sort of hits with the chords with the piano, and then she sort of swells the vocals. I sort of thought it gave a good vibe for the album and for the second track. I thought it sort of introduced you to the sound, introduced you to the album without having just a full track right off the bat. So I thought that was really cool. And then the track Shaolin Monk Mother Funk. Sorry, I want to say that one definitely correctly. Wow, a lot going on. Like I said, not going to break it down piece by piece because that would take a lot of time. Take a lot of honestly, this is a song you have to re-listen to and re-listen to and re-listen to really, really fully get it. But a couple of things I liked about it and that I want to talk about is rhythmic, both rhythmic independence and connectivity. So what I mean by that, I guess it's kind of almost an oxymoron, is during sort of, I don't know if you want to call it the main part of the song, but the uh sort of the beginning main verse, if you want to call it that. Ba-da-da-da, ba-da, 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 that sort of part. There's a lot going on. So they have this, what I mean by rhythmic independence is that there's, they're not just necessarily following one another. The bass has this sort of sort of this up and down sort of bass line, with the piano chords sort of doing their own little thing, so own little rhythm. They're not completely independent, but they have their own little rhythm. And then the vocals, and then I have to listen again for the guitar of what's exactly going on. I'm not exactly remembering. The vocals have their own sort of rhythmic style to it. That's what I really like about it. It's not this completely just flowy sort of typical sort of singer. She's not really belting out like a million notes or anything like that. It's not Celine Dion. uh, it's not just this big thing. It sort of has its own rhythm to it that kind of floats over the top and is independent from everything that's going on. I think that adds like another element of independence. And obviously you have the drums sort of going on in the beginning. I think during that part they're sort of laying down a very sort of steady beat. I think the bass drum's almost doing four on the floor if I remember correctly. So I think that was awesome. And then when I say connectivity, it's definitely jazz influence, modern, not even modern, but not 40s jazz, but definitely probably 60s, 70s, and later up to modern jazz. What I mean by that is they have a lot of what we call hits, and that's actually old big band. That's original big band jazz and all that stuff, or even New Orleans style jazz has these obviously thought out hits when everyone sort of hits together, whether it's a crack on the snare drum together with a chord on the piano, with a chord on the guitar, and then sort of like the vocals stop too, or have a sort of a pause, or have sort of a certain thing they say at that time. So I think that was really awesome. And I think that sort of gives like the listener, with so much layering and so many things going on, because there's harmonies, there's multiple parts going on at the time. It sort of gives the listener sort of something to catch on to, which I find really interesting, and just sort of, it's almost catchy. And that's what I mean by catch on. Now, yeah, I'm not going to break down each part of the song, but obviously they go through multiple genres almost. That's what I would call it. There's, I don't know if it was reggae. There's something that happened in the middle. It was like almost like a halftime funk sort of feel to it. somewhere in there, and then they sort of broke it down. They had that synth going on at the end. I think that's really interesting. It reminds me of what you would might call progressive music. A lot of people maybe not associate this with progressive music, just because it's a little more, I would say, jazz influenced. Um, people I think a lot of times think of progressive rock or metal bands, but there are progressive bands similar to them out there where that they don't stick to one sort of genre in a song. They don't stick to one sort of style in the song. They sort of go in and out. And by progressive, I think that it's maybe a hot topic or hot button word or whatever you want to call it. But the idea is that it continues to build upon each other. It's never just the same sort of going throughout. It's giving you a bunch of different things that go on to keep your sort of your listener interested. In this case, obviously, it's us. So a lot going on there. I think you could really break down each section of the song, but I think that sort of rhythmic connectivity and rhythmic independence, sort of being apart from each other and then coming together, is really important. The one thing with that I want to mention is I think the transition back into like that main feel of the song that I was talking about before, when they have silence and then she comes in, extremely powerful. I think that moment of silence gives that listener that edge, and then it comes right back into sort of back to the beginning, sort of give the listener, what they call a recapitulation of music, sort of a summary going back to what came before it, to sort of make the song almost feel like more of a song because it keeps jumping genres, jumping styles, but then you sort of brings it back. Like, okay, that's something that I heard before. It's something that's pretty catchy. Okay, so let's go to the third track. I don't know how to say it, but it says Laputa. All right. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so again, a, lo- a lot going on, also a little going on. What I mean by that is there's not, I wouldn't say a lot of layers, but the layers are very interesting and intentional. So what I mean is it does sort of build and layer on the song goes. So you sort of have that little intro, and then you have the vocals coming by themselves. She's a very interesting rhythmic style, and just a very interesting voice in general. I really like the voice. I'm not sure if they're um, from a country outside of America. I don't know, maybe Europe or Australia. It almost sounds British, maybe even South African. I'm not even sure. Um, but again, they sort of build these layers um, almost independent of each other. And what I noticed is in the beginning, so they had that vocals and they had sort of certain rhythmic style to it, and then they had probably a synth, even maybe a synth bass come in and sort of match that that rhythm that she was doing with her vocals. But then she sort of went away while that sort of stuck on. It continued, I think, throughout the whole entire song, and she sort of went to her own world. So it almost like the vocals almost introduced that part, and then the vocals went to its own thing, and it kind of left that part. So it's almost like a passing of the baton, almost. And then, um, so you have that part going on. Then you have the. I think it was interesting because I don't think I expected the halftime feel with the drums. So I don't know if it was real drums, but it sounded like electronic drums. So sort of that bass and maybe it's kind of like a fake snare almost. Um, Doing that sort of rhythm that was like a halftime feel, which I was not expecting when the vocals started off. I think it was almost sound like it was gonna be a little more upbeat song as far as rhythmically, but it sort of introduced that halftime feel, which I thought was really interesting, a really good choice. Um, and then again, they sort of introduce layers. They have some sort of bell going on at times. They have different vocal harmonies and vocal responses. It almost sounds like I think it's the same vocalist, but it sounds like two different vocals the way they mix it and the way the way they have it set up with effects and whatnot. And they added more and more layers, sort of doing their own independent thing. Again, like the last song, like independent layers, but together when they're come together, it sounds cohesive because the way they layer it, the way they use it, they're not just doing completely independent, random parts. They may have their own independence within them, but they're very related to each other. So I thought that was really interesting about the song. Another really interesting, really great song. And again, on top of all this stuff, they have really great harmony and melody, and that's what again makes most music, and including this music, that can seem very complex, very complicated, very layered at times. Without that really great harmony and really great melody, it's not that good, and that's what ties something like this together. If her vocals weren't quite the way they are, if they didn't have that sort of rhythmic themes, they didn't have that just standard, really amazing harmony, to be honest, and then melody that really catches your ears and is very catchy. It can be complicated, but it is very catchy. That's what sort of grounds the song and makes it not just a bunch of you know random things thrown together in a song. So let's pop up the next two tracks. So it's gonna be our last two tracks, and the first one I'm seeing is super short. So I think it's either going off our last song or going into the song. So we're just gonna go straight through track 4 and track 5. So let's pop up. It's called Creations Part 1, and hopefully we don't catch an ad, but it's gonna go into Borderline with My Atoms. All right, 3, 2, 1. All right, all right. So, uh, I really, really, really dug that track. So I think that track was more almost like a traditional song as opposed to all the other ones before that. Definitely R&B soul influence. There was uh, the bridge almost straight up sounded like or what I think was called the bridge, almost straight up sounded like Stevie Wonder, PJ Morton esque with those sort of triplet ups and sort of that almost that sort of not Latin feel, but it's like a fake, almost a fake hinting towards like a Latin feel. But a lot of good, a lot of awesome stuff going on. So I think a theme with the band, a theme with the album is just interesting harmony in general. Just not they will throw little things in there, and it's for a split second, but it catches your ear. It makes it more interesting. I think with the melody they could simplify the harmony a lot. If they really wanted to, they could really simplify the harmony, but they throw in um, some specific harmonic choices, sort of keep the listener interested and sort of catch the listener off guard. Or like a random, maybe just one chord that you're like, oh, what was that for a split second? So that's really interesting. That goes on through the whole album, but and I think in a more maybe straightforward, if you want to call it that song like that, that really catches your ears a lot of the time. Uh, so with the beginning and as it recapitulates back at the end, I really enjoyed that sort of feel between that the sort of vocal. I don't know if they're swells necessarily, but the sort of rhythmic vocal, um, rhythmic the rhythm in the vocals essentially da 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 da. So that constant sort of thing with the drums and the band sort of matching up. So they sort of play and they stop in between her breaths, in between her phrases, her pauses, and they sort of go back to that sort of full time feel. So they go in between again, sort of rhythmically matching all together. And I'm pretty sure they were switching time signatures there, which is really interesting. It sort of gave you almost like an extra bar, an extra beat that you weren't expecting, with sort of a guitar fill sliding up and then sort of coming back to that sort of rhythm. And I thought that part by itself was extremely interesting and really great. The chorus was really, really awesome. The melody in the chorus was really, really great. A lot of, again, vocal layering going on. So she has, I don't know if she's layering with herself, but she's doing a bunch of harmonies and sort of answering her main melody. So she has her main melody and then she has some condensed harmonies sort of uh, going along with it that's sort of answering her. And it's really interesting. And something I do want to mention, even with that intro, they throw little harmonies here and there. They sprinkle little harmonies, and I always encourage people to sort of put in those little interesting tidbits into the songs. You can really strip down a song like that and just make it as simple as you can make it. Just melody, harmony, rhythm, but the little things they add on, that the production value, that's what takes a lot of times songs to sort of a next level, and they really take their songs to the next level because on top of just production wise and musical choices and mixing, they make extremely smart, intelligent, and just tasteful, I guess is the best word, musical choices and uh, musical devices. So yeah, a lot of good stuff going on in the song. I really enjoyed basically everything from the bass to the guitar to the drums, and especially the vocals in that track, which were really amazing during that chorus. They switched to that again. They switched to that sort of bridge, that sort of feel. I don't know what you even want to call it. It's not a Latin feel. It's some sort of different feel with sort of the piano doing like the triplets up. Um, and sort of answering back down. And I thought that was really, really interesting. It broke up the song a little bit, and then it sort of again took you back. It sort of added on, built up. Each chorus sort of built up, and yeah, that's one I want to go listen back to it now. I'm not gonna do that, but definitely a really, really interesting song. Just listening back. Yeah, so I wouldn't call it a Latin feel, that bridge. Definitely not a Latin feel, but sort of that a little different feel. That sort of the shaker, the percussion. Yeah, and it's definitely less like a heavy rhythm section, more of just that shaker going on, and So everybody's sort of floating, and then it again builds into that chorus, and that chorus is really really amazing. So again, you can break down all of these songs a lot. There is a lot going on, but I think for our sake, I think keep you at that. So overall, the things I really really enjoyed about this album so far, and this band, I know we haven't listened to the whole album. It's just their layering, their rhythmic connectivity and independence, their harmonic complexity, melodic complexity, and just it's a unique approach uh, to to creating music. It is not a traditional approach to writing music. They have a lot of influences, you can tell, from a lot of different genres, and they're putting that together and making their own thing. And that's ultimately what's the most important. Music is, using your influences to create what you really, really enjoy. And if they really enjoy it, I can tell they really enjoy it, and that's why I really enjoy it. So I hope you had fun with us today. Again, Hiatus Kaiyote. The album is Choose Your Weapon. I think it's a really great band, a really great album. I'm really interested to listen to the full album straight through. I've heard a couple of these songs, but I've never actually listened to this album before. So I'm really excited. I'm probably going to go and listen to this album straight through. So if you really enjoyed this, please comment, like, subscribe. If you really want more of this or even longer, a whole album sort of active listening session, make sure you comment and we'll try to get that done. So hope to see you next time. But in the meantime, happy practicing.